Hello friends, welcome to Manifest IAS. This is Karan George. I am Ayush Agarwal, Economics faculty at Manifest IAS. Today we'll be discussing on industry and employment and whatever has happened in the past 1 year. This is part 1 of the video. So we'll be covering about the government's proposal about selling stakes in LIC, strategic sale of BPCL, general steps about ease of doing business and what has happened thus far, about audit, about corporate governance in firms, then an important thing which is pensions, about the rulings of pension, what are the rules regarding the pension funds. Next, we'll be talking about the SEZs and what is the history of SEZs and what is the importance of the SEZ amendment. Then lastly, we'll be talking about the 4 labor codes, which is Industrial Relations Code, Code on Wages, Code on Social Security, and Code on Health and Wellness of Employees. So starting with the first theme, which is disinvestment.
Subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss an update.
Now, disinvestment every year is an important event in the budget. It is also about autonomy. It is also about people's choices about keeping the silver spoon or selling them off. And it is also referred to as financing daily consumption by selling your family silver. So we have to be very careful about disinvestment. So the central government aims to garner 2.1 lakh crore. Again, 2.1 lakh crore, which is the highest target thus far in the budget. So according to the Indian budget document, it expects to earn rupees 90,000 crore by selling stake in PSBs, public sector banks, and balance 1.2 lakh crore by CPSUs. So as we know, this is a huge target. We have to really broaden the horizon of disinvestment. So the government used a phrase, sell whatever is sellable. Now what does this mean? That government wants to maintain its stake. So it wants to maintain the strategic stake. Strategic here means more than 51%. So government aims to cut stake in PSUs to below 51%. So this strategic nature of PSUs goes a fundamental change where the government stakeholding or government shareholding will reduce below 51%. So this is the first time we are talking about strategic sale and that too below 51%, although government will remain the largest shareholder. So what is this about? These strategic sales have been proposed in BPCL, Shipping Corporation of India, Concor, which is Container Corporation of India, Tehri Hydro, NEPCO, which is Northeast Power Corporation. Then what is the important thing? PSUs to be identified by officials and government to retain management control. So remember, we are selling more than 51%, but still the government will maintain management control and that too on a case-to-case basis. So what has been the history of disinvestment so far? So disinvestment is a good part about, we have to think about what has been the role of PSUs and then we'll come to the relevance of disinvestment. So in the nation building in the post-1947 era, PSUs were conceived as part of state-led capitalism to bring self-reliant economic growth. See, again, we are talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat, we are talking about self-reliant India. So PSUs were a good backbone or good cornerstone for self-reliant economic growth in the post-1947 era. So what was the thrust at that time? It was import substitution, job creation, and tackling regional imbalances. So again, there are 3 points. First, import substitution. Second, job creation. And third is regional imbalances. So what was the strategy from 1951 to 90? The number of central PSUs increased from 5 to 244. So, but by 1990, many PSUs had turned inefficient, or what we say sick PSUs or loss-making PSUs. So, what happened after 91? What has been the reforms in disinvestment? What have been the reforms in PSUs in the post-reform era? So, poor finances forced the government to liberalize economy and think about its PSU policy. So there was talk about autonomy, disinvestment, higher dividends from PSUs. And really this took off in the post-2001 era. 2001 is important because this is the time we started a strategic sale policy. For example, ITDC or Balco, Modern Foods, etc. were sold off as part of disinvestment. Then the left government with the UPA was a big hurdle in the post-2004 or in the UPA area, where the government slowed down on disinvestment because of the various coalition politics, and also there was a pressure on the government to maintain stake in the PSUs. Then again this was revived in part of post 2016 era, where government had plans to divest stake in Bharat Dynamics, Garden Reach Shipbuilders and Engineers, Mazgai Dock Shipbuilders, Mishra Dhatu, etc., where stake sale up to 25% were planned in the post-2016 era to firm up plans for greater infrastructure spending, or what we say expenditure switching. Arun Jaitley said that I am not disinvesting anything. I am just reorganizing public expenditure by selling off one asset and building another. So this is part of that initiative where the money sold from disinvestment is used to invest in roads and other social and physical infrastructure. So coming in this line, the government proposed in this year to divest some stake or some minority stake in LIC. So how is this significant? First of all, this will be done by initial public offering because, as you know, LIC is not a listed company. So the state insurer were established in 1956 through LIC Act. Then listing would bring discipline. What does this mean? See, if the LIC has some stake in the stock market, which is listed company, it has to declare some governance rules. It has to follow SEBI standards. It has to follow reporting standards. So it will bring in discipline. It will bring in retail investors, and also it will cause opportunity for, or it will create opportunity for wealth creation. Then next, what is it about? So what are the implications? See, now there are various hurdles, there are various questions. For example, I am a LIC policy holder. So what will be the impact on me? So what is the impact? Before the government divests part of the stake through LIC Act, previously all the insurance companies were regulated, but LIC is under sovereign guarantee under Section 37 of the Act. So under this sovereign guarantee, LIC pays 5% of its surplus to the government and balance 95% is given to the policy holders. But if you look at the other insurance policies, typically they give 10% of their surplus to shareholders and balance 90% to policy holders. So we can clearly see that private sector gives 10% profits to its shareholders, 90% to policy holders, whereas LIC gives 95% to policy holders. So clearly LIC has an added advantage here. So with outside investors becoming shareholders, with a few even gaining seats on the insurance board, there could be a demand to tweak the mix between shareholders and policy holders. So as a policy holder, maybe my premium or maybe my bonus goes down if I purchase a LIC. Further, the norms of SEBI on corporate governance would require the insurance company to make timely and quick disclosures about defaults, among other things. So that is what we said about getting in discipline in listing of LIC and the insurance policies. Now coming to the next one, which is strategic sale of BPCL. Now under this, Government of India has proposed to sell 52.98% of BPCL to private sector or a strategic buyer. But notedly, this would not include the stake, which is 61.65% stake of BPCL in Numaligarh refinery. Right? Then next, the government has set a 10 billion minimum net worth criteria for the eligibility for participation of stake sale in BPCL. Now coming to the next point, in case of a consortium, because maybe one person does not have that 10 billion worth, or maybe it wants to broaden the people who want to participate in the tender. So it has said for a consortium, the minimum net worth of a lead member should be at least 1 billion. Lastly, the government has explicitly excluded PSUs. For example, in the previous case, we have seen that HPCL was bought by ONGC. So the same thing should not happen. So any organization in which the government owns more than 51% will not be eligible to participate in this strategic sale. Now coming to the next theme, which is ease of doing business. Under this, first of all, the World Bank publishes annually the ranking of 190 countries on the basis of a few indicators such as construction permits, starting a business, enforcing contracts, getting laxity, resolving insolvency, etc. So all these are very important from prelims purpose. For example, they might ask which of the following are indicators as part of ease of doing business and how many countries are there. Let's say 190 countries. Who publishes them? World Bank. So what is the primary role of ease of doing business? First of all, it starts with everything from opening a business, getting a location of the business, accessing the finance, day-to-day operations, securing business environment, etc. So all this helps in enabling a country to facilitate a better business environment for its customers or for its investors. So why is this important? Because right now we are aiming for a slot in the top 50 in doing business. So what have been the reforms thus far or in the last year? First of all, the Corporate Affairs Ministry launched a new form which is called Spice Plus form, to offer 10 services. So it will be electronic form which will simplify the procedures for filing documentation. And also incorporation of companies has been done through a portal which is MCA 21 or Ministry of Corporate Affairs 21. Lastly, by doing such incremental changes, we have been able to consistently improve our doing business ranking from 142 in 2015 or 142 in 2014 to 63 in 2019. So what has stood out for us? Dealing with concession permits has seen a jump from 52 to 27. Trading across borders has seen a jump from 80 to 68. Insolvency has taken a good jump from 108 to 52. But although we are doing badly in a few things such as enforcing contracts, protecting minority investors, getting credit, etc., which are a work in progress. Now next we come to the question of audit and corporate governance. Now there are four big audit companies such as KPMG, PwC, etc. So often we find that these companies are not only auditing, but they are consulting the government, they consulting the companies in various domains. So this creates an overlap structure. So it results in the auditor being reviewing himself. So this is an overlap of function. So how do we resolve this issue? First of all, there are 5 threads of independence of auditors. Those are self-interest, self-review, advocacy, familiarity, and intimidation. For example, self-interest. Like if I am auditing, I should get the contract for your consultancy. So that is about self-interest. Now, if I am your consultant, how can I review myself? So this is also a problem of audit. Again, the similar lines goes to advocacy, familiarity, intimidation, etc. So the economic concentration of the big four audit firms and the need to build capacity of homegrown firms. So this line is very important. Need to build capacity of homegrown Indian firms at par with global organizations force this change. And also it's about corporate governance in the end. So who are these big four? PwC or PricewaterhouseCoopers, Deloitte, Ernst & Young and KPMG, which operate in India through a network of local chartered accountant firms. So how is this important? The big four companies right now make up around 14 to 18% of total revenue from audit in India. So that means they're giving roughly 86% to 82% of their business from non-audit functions. So ICAI, which is the regulator in India, ISO regulations clearly forbid auditors from earning more from non-audit services than audit fee. So therefore, this creates a problem of corporate governance, or what we say double whammy of governance. So MCA Committee of Experts recommended a 50% cap on audit fee for non-audit services. So therefore, it's about corporate governance. Now coming to the next issue, which is about extension of PF benefits or provident fund benefits. Now PF benefits should be extended to contractual employees. That was a ruling by the Supreme Court. Now why is this important? See, because we have regular employees and contractual employees or temporary workforce. Now these temporary workers do not get the same salaries or same benefits as your permanent workers. So that puts them in a disadvantage. But if you see in the post-reform period, more than 80% of the workforce has been contractual in nature. So therefore, this judgment has a wide-scale implication. So employees who draw wages or salaries directly or indirectly, so indirectly could be through a contractor. So because, as we said, there is involuntary or informalization in India. So usually they are indirect employees of the company. So these will also be benefited from the Supreme Court judgment or the amendment in the Employees Provident Fund Act. The judgment came on the basis of a petition filed by Pawan Hans Limited, a government company which operates helicopters, and also the exploration in the hilly areas, charter services, promotion of tourism, etc. So lastly, the company implemented the PF trust regulations only with respect to regular employees, but did not give the benefits to its contractual employees. Now coming to the next important issue, which is SEZ bill cleared or SEZ amendment bill for special economic zones. So what is this special economic zones about? First of all, the SEZs came into being in 2005 under SEZ Act 2005. What are the main objectives here? First is to generate additional economic activity. Secondly, promotion of exports of goods and services. Third, investment. And lastly, creation of employment opportunities. Also, this helped in development of infrastructure in various places in India, especially industrial infrastructure, service infrastructure, enabling better exports of goods and services. So SEZs in India are areas that offer incentives to resident businesses, and they are competitive in the form of attractive infrastructure, duty-free exports, tax incentives, and various other measures. So SEZs were specially delineated duty-free enclaves. See, when we come to national income as well, anything which you buy from SEZ is treated like an import, and if you sell it there, it is treated like an export. So they have a DTAA clause, which is they're not included in the domestic territory. As we can see in the second point, they are deemed to be as foreign territory. Lastly, there is no licensing requirement for imports. Manufacturing and service activities will be allowed, and the units are only required to achieve positive net foreign exchange to be calculated cumulatively over a period of 5 years. That means they must export more than they import. And domestic sales are subject to full custom duty. As we said, that anything you buy from SEZ is treated like an import. And there is full freedom of subcontracting. No routine examination of customs authorities because they are outside the domestic territory. They have got a foreign treatment. And lastly, SEZ developers, co-developers units enjoy direct tax and indirect tax benefits under SEZ Act 2005. So what is this act about? The Special Economic Zone Amendment Bill 2019, making a trust or any entity notified by central government eligible for consideration for grant of permission. For example, Tata Trust or Patanjali Trust. So we have various trusts which want to establish SEZs. So we have opened through this amendment the line where trusts can also set up the special economic zones. So this will attract alternative investment funds, trusts, and persons to invest more in these unique areas. The government is planning to create large coastal economic zones consisting of a series of SEZs, and this process will involve real estate, infrastructure, etc. And lastly, this opens up the possibility of all types of trusts to operate from SEZs, be it private and be it REIT, InvITs, PF Trust, Port Trust run by the government, etc. For example, Jawaharlal Nehru Port Trust can also start an SEZ as part of Coastal Economic Zone project. Lastly, these trusts run a wide range of activities such as healthcare, education, skill, livelihood generation, etc. Now coming to the most important feature, which is Industrial Relations Code, or there are the labor laws which needs to be changed. So there are 44 labor laws now which are being consolidated into 4 codes. So the first code is Industrial Relations Code Bill. So how is this important? This aims to simplify 3 laws covering trade unions, industrial employment, and disputes into a single law. So fixed term workers, first of all, treated at par with regular workers. So temporary workers will be treated same as your regular workers. That means they will be getting the same pension, the same security, the same social security, insurance, etc. as per your regular workers. There will not be any difference in the wages or salaries of these people as well. So this is very important because, as we discussed previously, 86% of the workers in India are indirect workers. So bill would pave the way for setting up of a 2-member tribunal for industrial disputes. So this will also help in dispute resolution faster. It will take up important cases, and also it will be adjudicated jointly and rest by a single member, resulting in speedier disposal of cases. Next is the code on wages as part of your 4 labor codes. So first is industrial relations and second is code on wages. This is very important because this will cover a whole attractive previous judgments such as or previous codes such as Payment of Wages Act, Minimum Wages Act, Bonus Act, Remuneration Act. So code will apply to all employees. I again see this is very important for prelims, that the code will apply to all employees. So it does not matter whether you are temporary or an intern or a permanent worker, it will apply to all employees. So the central government will make wage related decisions for employment such as railways, mines, oil fields, and the state governments will make decisions for all other employment. Then next is, according to the code, the central government will fix a floor wage, taking into account living standards of the workers. So under this code itself, there has also been a talk of a national wage or a national minimum wage, which is agreeable by all the states and all the stakeholders, which is very important. Lastly, before fixing the floor wage, the central government may obtain the advice of a central advisory board. So the wages will be decided on the consultancy of central advisory board, and also they may consult the state governments. The minimum wages will be revised and reviewed by the central or state governments at an interval of not more than 5 years, comparing the skill of the workers and also the difficulty of the work involved. Also, the code on wages talks about overtime. See, right now we have normal work, which is 8-hour shift. But what in case of overtime? The central or state government may fix the number of hours that constitute a normal working day. See, we have decided 8 hours. So 8 hours plus or 6 hours plus, depending on the consultation between the central and the state government. So in case employees work in excess of normal working day, they'll be entitled to overtime wage, which is twice the normal rate. Again, this is very important. Overtime wage would be twice the normal rate of wages. So what is also, it talks about bonus. All employees whose wages do not exceed a specific monthly amount will be entitled to an annual bonus. So the bonus would be at least 8.33% of his wages or rupees 100, whichever is higher. So an employee can receive a maximum bonus of 20% of his annual wages. And lastly, it talks about gender discrimination. The code prohibits gender discrimination in matters related to wages, recruitment, and also work of similar nature. So work of similar nature is defined as work which is of the same skill, effort, experience, and responsibilities. Next, under code on wages is about advisory board. As we discussed, the central advisory board will discuss about the national minimum wage. So it will consist of employers, employees, independent persons, 5 representatives of the state government, etc. Further, 1/3 of the total members on both the central and state boards will be women. So what is their main responsibility? First is fix up the minimum wages, and second, employment opportunities for women. See, gender discrimination, as we talked about, equal opportunities for women are also discussed by this board. And also important, under this board, 1/3 of the members will be women. Lastly, it talks about offences in the code. First is paying less than due wages. Second, for contravening any provision of the code. So penalties will be varying depending on the nature of the offence. And what is the maximum penalty here? 3 months along with a fine up to 1 lakh rupees. Now coming to the next one, which is code on occupational safety. It talks about safety and health care of the workers. So the code seeks to regulate health and safety condition of workers in establishments with 10 or more workers in all mines and docks. It subsumes 13 labor laws which were there, such as Factories Act, Mines Act, Dock Workers Act, Contract Labor Act, etc. Then it talks about occupational safety boards at the national and state level to advise the central and state governments on what? On standards, rules, regulations framed under the code. The code also bars civil courts from hearing matters under the code. Therefore, only judicial recourse for a person aggrieved is to file a writ petition before the relevant high court. So it can be argued that a bar on civil court from hearing any matter under the code may result in denial of justice. So this needs a close attention. Lastly, we talk about code on social security. This also talks about that moving social security and labor welfare right now falls under the concurrent list, which means both the union and state governments can make laws regarding these topics. So under the code, the central government may notify various social security schemes for the benefit of workers. Please subscribe and also comment on the video. Thank you.